Out of freaking nowhere, Steam has dropped a bombshell that has the potential to change the gaming landscape. Folks, we have new Steam hardware coming. It all started with a Steam Deck, which proved to be massively popular. And now we are being introduced to a new Steam controller, the Steam Machine, which is essentially a PC console hybrid that, leans more into PC, but has a console-like experience with SteamOS and the controller, and the Steam Frame, which is a new VR headset. And what's really interesting is the timing of this, because Xbox recently has been strongly hinting that their next-gen console will be a PC console hybrid, and Steam essentially has kind of beaten them to that race. But before we get to the wider implications of how this can impact gaming, let's actually look at the individual hardware, starting with the Steam Machine, which is, I think, the thing that a lot of people are going to be interested in, which is essentially a consoleized version of the Steam Deck. I mean, it's just a PC, right? I mean, it's going to run SteamOS. It's going to have the same basic principles as a SteamOS, but it's going to be a stationary device that's going to live in your living room, and it's going to make PC gaming and accessing your library from the comfort of your couch just a more frictionless experience. It feels like it's an attempt to bridge the gap between console gamers and PC gamers. What's crazy about this hardware is how small it is. I mean, you can see right here, just looking at the hand size and comparing it to the machine, from what hands-on experiences have described from major outlets, it's basically like the size of a GameCube, except it can run games like AAA games at 4K. Though, of course, you'll have to modify some settings, and also you have to use AI upscaling and the like to be able to run some of those games at 4K, but it has that capability. But it is essentially a 6-inch cube that is meant for 4K 60 FPS gaming with FSR. Scrolling down here, we can find the tech specs. The CPU is a semi-custom AMD Zen 4, which goes up to 4.8 gigahertz and a 30-watt TDP. The GPU is a semi-custom AMD RDNA 3. And then there are two specs with which you can get this hardware with. You've got a storage of 512 gigabytes NVMe SSD and a 2 terabyte NVMe SSD. I think with this being a PC gaming centric device, you'd be hard pressed to not get that 2 terabyte version, though you can opt to get the 512 gigabyte version and expand your storage with micro SD, so there's that option. And then you've got your usual Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, you've got various ports like display ports. HDMI 2.0 is a little disappointing. I wish it was 2.1, but it'll get the job done. And then as far as USB ports go, you've got two USB-A 3.2 Gen 1 ports in the front, two USB-A 2.0 high-speed ports in the back, and one USB-C 3.2 Gen 2 port in the back. For comparison, the power that this device has is sort of the equivalent of an RTX 4060 or an AMD RX 7600M, with Valve claiming that the Steam Machine is roughly 6 times the horsepower of the Steam Deck. So plenty of power for such a small package. Now, is this the most powerful PC ever made? Of course not, but it is a pretty capable PC that is probably going to be priced very competitively. I would suspect that at the lowest end, this device is going to be in the high hundreds. The 2 terabyte version might be like $1,000 or less. The pricing is paramount for a device like this to be able to garner mass market appeal. But so far, in terms of specs and the strategy that they're pursuing, it sounds like they are aiming for something really affordable that also is very capable. And then you've got the new Steam controller. And I, for one, love the original Steam controller, but it could use some improvements. And pretty much every complaint you could have about the original was addressed with this new design. And it has all the features that you would expect, the trackpads, all of your usual inputs, the 2 back buttons, motion control, so on and so forth, as well as this puck that is a really cool design. This puck is both a wireless transmitter and a thing that charges your Steam controller, and it attaches magnetically, so it's super easy to just kind of engage with this and attach and detach your controller and make it wireless or wired. And ergonomically, it just looks really comfortable. The button placements and everything, I'll have to get my hands on it to say for sure how it feels, but I'm liking the placement of everything so far with the 2 trackpads easily accessible. And then there's the Steam Frame, which is basically Steam's latest VR headset that not only plays games wirelessly from whatever you connect this little USB dongle to, that transmits data at really fast speeds to the point where it's indiscernible in terms of lag and whatnot. And this is according to outlets like, Linus Tech Tips, who have gone hands-on with this and have said that, yeah, it works incredibly well. But natively, it's also like a PC that can download games and whatnot in the headset itself, you don't have to rely on a separate PC to play VR games on this thing. Though if you want to play the highest end VR games with the highest end graphics, you might want to have a separate PC that you can connect this dongle to. And it's got, technology like, it rendering things at the highest resolution wherever you're looking. And that way they save on power, which is a technology that a lot of VR headsets use now, but it's nice to see it in this headset. And the computer itself is being run on the following processor, a 4 nanometer Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, which is one of the more modern ARM chipsets that are used in some of the latest smartphones and tablets, and you name it. It's got, quite a bit of RAM, and you've got multiple options for storage, 256 gigabytes or 1 terabyte. And then beyond that, the ocular displays are actually pretty high resolution, 2160 by 2160 LCD per eye with up to 144 hertz refresh rate. It's not quite the level of something like the Apple Vision Pro, which is like 30-something by 30-something micro OLED per eye. That display is absolutely gorgeous for that kind of VR experience, but that's more a machine dedicated for AR. This being more VR, I think this resolution is more than adequate, and it's going to make games look really good. And I'm curious to see what this device will be priced at. So what Steam is doing here is creating this whole family of devices that work together with each other seamlessly. And I mean, all of these devices can link with each other. And it's actually a really cool strategy. Now, Xbox's own Phil Spencer has come out to congratulate Valve and Steam on this announcement, highlighting how this is the best strategy for gaming moving forward, because Xbox, they don't want to do the traditional model that Nintendo and PlayStation are still pursuing of releasing dedicated consoles that have exclusives and whatnot. What Xbox is planning for is essentially a console PC hybrid. They've hinted that the next-gen Xbox will be akin to like the ROG Xbox Ally, which is basically a handheld PC. And so Phil Spencer said this about the Steam machine and this family of new Steam hardware. Gaming moves forward when players and developers have more ways to play and create, especially across open platforms. Expanding access across PC, console, and handheld devices reflects a future built on choice, core values that have guided Xbox's vision from the start. As one of the largest publishers on Steam, we welcome new options for players to access games anywhere. Congrats on today's announcement. Now, it's nice to see this kind of rapport and support, but it is worth highlighting that this puts Xbox in a precarious position. The new strategy that Xbox is pursuing is essentially the Steam strategy that Steam is pursuing, especially with the announcement of this new hardware. Except Xbox doesn't have the ecosystem and infrastructure that Steam does in the PC space. From what reports say, Xbox's next-gen hardware will be powerful, but that also means that it'll be a significantly higher price point where it might not be as appealing as, say, this Steam machine that will likely be significantly cheaper, maybe not as powerful as the next-gen Xbox PC console hybrid, but affordability is a major factor in a console or a piece of hardware garnering mass market appeal. And then there's the fact that the Steam machine is running the same operating system as the Steam Deck, which is one of the things that Steam Deck was praised for. The issue right now with Windows for gaming is that Windows is a major point of friction for gaming due to the fact that Windows wasn't designed for gaming, so that operating system with its constant updates and upkeep and all these things that get in the way of quickly getting to your games, that is the thing that Microsoft has to solve for their next-gen console. Maybe they're already working on it. Maybe they'll surprise us with the new operating system that they announced or the version of Windows that they kind of put out there for the next-gen Xbox. But until that is at the level that Steam Deck is at with SteamOS and how seamless that experience is and how games like tend to perform better on SteamOS because that operating system is so lean and so like specifically tailored to play games. Until Windows get to that level, I don't think that next-gen Xbox running Windows will have the kind of appeal that traditional consoles do, where it's just super easy to jump in. It's just plug and play. Now, that's not to say that the Steam machine is completely seamless like traditional consoles, due to the fact that it is still a PC, and because of its hardware not being top of the line, a lot of hands-on experiences have noted that they did have to go into the settings and tweak things to find the perfect settings that would make the game run at an adequate frame rate while also having the best visual fidelity the machine can output. So there is that element that traditional consoles don't have to deal with, but I think Xbox has an even greater level of friction with Windows being involved. At least SteamOS is lean and efficient. And I think Steam as a platform just has been primed for this kind of hardware and this kind of strategy in ways that Xbox hasn't, because for the longest time, Xbox has marketed itself as just a traditional console competitor a la Nintendo and PlayStation. So Xbox can certainly attempt to make this transition, and maybe it'll go well if they play their cards right and if the execution of the next-gen hardware and its operating system is well done. But Steam kind of beating them to it and having a better offer and proposition, both in terms of pricing and the kind of navigation experience, the UI and the operating system and the ecosystem of Steam, that's where I think Xbox is between a rock and a hard place kind of situation where they kind of fall short of what everyone else is doing in the traditional console space. Next-gen Xbox will fall short because it is going to be a PC that has some friction points compared to traditional consoles, and it's going to be higher priced. And then when it comes to like the PC console hybrid landscape, Steam as a brand is much more established. Its hardware is going to be more reasonably priced, and it has a better operating system than Xbox does right now, who are currently working on an operating system that will be suited for gaming, but whether they have the ability to succeed on that front remains to be seen. It almost feels like Xbox is getting into this new strategy, this new race that they're trying to compete in a little too late, in the same way that they tried to get into the smartphone market with Windows Phone. But because iOS and Android were already so well established and Windows Phone just couldn't keep up and catch up to the established norm and just couldn't execute on it being kind of at the level of those competitors, it ultimately faded away and ended up failing. And my fear is that that's where Xbox might potentially be headed with this next-gen hardware, where they came into it a little too late and without the kind of established ecosystem that competitors have. But only time will tell. These are just concerns that I have. How things play out could be entirely different. But in terms of what the general reception has been, I think folks are really excited about this Steam machine. The reception has been really positive. I think the Steam Deck has built up a lot of goodwill in terms of what Valve and Steam are doing right now with hardware. And seeing this kind of ecosystem expand even further is exciting, and it feels like Steam is playing their cards right. So Daniel Ahmad here, for example, is saying that Valve is doing a great job building a true gaming ecosystem with a unified OS that spans multiple devices. If they lean into retail expansion and ramp up marketing, they could really break out of the niche space they currently occupy in hardware and compete with the big three. Now, one thing that a commenter highlighted is that currently, SteamOS cannot run certain titles like Fortnite and Call of Duty and Battlefield, GTA Online, EAFC, etc., because of SteamOS's limitations, where Windows can run all those games. So yeah, those are issues that Valve and Steam are going to have to resolve to ensure that the Steam Deck and the Steam Machine can appeal to a wide audience, because those are some of the most popular games out there right now. Here we have somebody else, Synth Potato, saying if the Steam Machine is a $400 or $500 device that can run all Steam games, is easily moddable, and has genuinely great specs with free online multiplayer, we might be looking at a new legitimate competitor in the gaming market, especially if it launches with Half-Life 3. One can dream. Now, that's another interesting discussion. Is the Steam Machine disrupting the traditional console model? I personally don't think so, because at the end of the day, you can still only play those coveted Nintendo games on Nintendo machines, and you can only play those coveted PlayStation exclusive games on PlayStation, or at least, for a limited time. They are doing timed exclusives, or you can eventually play them on PC. So if you are able to hold out until they come out on PC, then you can play PlayStation games on your Steam machine. But that wait is something that not everyone's willing to go through, and they want to play those, really desired and really hyped PlayStation titles on day one, and that's the appeal of getting a PlayStation, on top of the fact that those being your traditional consoles that are specifically designed for gaming, their operating system are completely frictionless. It's plug and play. It's easy to dive in. And that's something that the Steam Machine still will struggle with a little bit, not as much as Windows, but it's not going to be as frictionless as traditional consoles, whose games have been designed specifically for the specs of the consoles that are launched in. But the Steam Machine also has the potential of, because the Steam Machine is going to be a specific spec, in the same way that, say, like Cyberpunk 2077 released the Steam Deck setting for the Steam Deck, optimized the game specifically for Steam Deck, I think it's possible that the Steam Machine will start receiving Steam Machine presets, and that might make the process a lot more frictionless, but that's up to developers to ensure that their PC games have that feature enabled, that it can detect the Steam Machine, and then it can optimize the games so that it just runs flawlessly without having to tweak anything, with frame rates that are adequate and with a level of visual fidelity that can match, traditional consoles. But Steam games can ultimately be accessed on any machine, and so some folks may legitimately not have a reason to purchase something like the Steam Machine, whereas with traditional consoles, they can only play certain games on those consoles. And with something like the, Switch 2, there's the added a convenience of it being a really like portable device that also plays, those Nintendo games and is also really powerful. So I do think that traditional consoles still have enough benefits to them that they're not going away anywhere. I don't think the Steam Machine is going to destroy that landscape, but it is certainly going to be an interesting addition that at the very least will help bridge the gap. Console players who might have been interested in PC gaming but don't want to deal with the complications there might look at Steam Machine and say that's a little more appealing. Even if they have to tweak some settings here and there, it's still a lot more easily accessible to play on a Steam Machine than on your traditional PC. And then you've got the Steam controller that unifies everything for a more console-like experience. So as long as the user experience is completely fluid and seamless, the Steam Machine has that potential to garner as much interest as your, traditional consoles. But yeah, that's kind of my take on Steam's new lineup of hardware. I think what they're doing, given what this brand represents and what they've built up over so many years, this is the perfect next step for this specific company. And it'll be interesting to see whether we'll see a disruption in the gaming landscape. I think ultimately for us consumers, it just gives us more options. It's just more cool ways to play games. And I think that's a great thing. So I see this as a positive development. And I'm curious to see whether, competitors like Xbox and Nintendo and PlayStation will have a reaction to this in the sense of will they feel threatened by this? Phil Spencer clearly seems to think this is really cool, but just from a business standpoint, will this impact Xbox's strategy, given that Xbox's strategy is not too dissimilar from Steam's, just without all the years of like actually having that ecosystem that Steam has been able to build up since its inception. But that's my take. I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on the new Steam hardware, the Steam Machine, the Steam controller, and the Steam Frame in the comments section below. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Yong Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Yong Out.